A lone drifter walked the dusty trail toward a broken homestead where sorrow clung to every fence post and crumbling porch. The sun bled gold across dying fields as he paused beside the sagging gate, watching Silent House. He carried nothing but a thin bedroll and the quiet patience of a man long emptied by the road. 3 sisters stood frozen on the weathered porch like mourning doves trapped inside an endless gray winter sky. Eldest Eliza clutched her father's old rifle with knuckles white as bone, her stare sharp and unwelcoming. Middle sister Bethany hid behind a curtain of unwashed hair, her breath shallow with years of swallowed sobs. The youngest, Clara, barely 10, hugged a broken corn husk doll and shivered though the day was warm. Their father had died 3 months past, leaving a ranch that was already bleeding into dusty ruin. The drifter did not speak nor ask permission. He simply set down his bedroll beside the barn. He saw the broken fence rails that gaped like missing teeth, and he knelt to lift a fallen post. Eliza's voice cut across the yard. "We'll need charity from a man with no name or past." He met her gaze without flinching, then slid his calloused fingers along the splintered wood and began working. Clara watched from the porch step as the stranger's scarred hands hammered a rail back into solid alignment. Bethany peered through a dirty window and noticed how he moved without waste, each gesture intentional and calm. By dusk, the corral gate swung straight again, and the drifter wiped sweat from his brow without complaint. Eliza set a tin cup of water on the fence post and retreated before he could offer any thanks. That night, he slept in the barn loft while the wind carried the whispers of 3 grieving girls below. Clara crept out before sunrise and sat cross-legged near his bedroll, staring at his still scarred palms. He opened his eyes slowly and gave her the smallest nod, a flicker of recognition that needed no words. She asked, "Did your hands hurt when you fixed the fence?" And he showed her a deep old scar. "Pain leaves a map," he said softly, "but you can still use the hands to build something new." That morning, he found the windmill blades frozen and the water trough dry as a sun-bleached skull. Without instruction, he climbed the rusty ladder and began greasing gears while Eliza watched from the kitchen door. Bethany gathered eggs and realized the drifter had already repaired the henhouse latch that had been broken since spring. The ranch began to breathe again under his quiet attention. Each task a prayer he never spoke aloud. On the 5th day, a feral Mustang charged the fence line, its eyes wild with untamed prairie fury. The drifter walked straight into the corral with a rope looped loosely and a hum low in his chest. Clara gasped as the horse reared, but the man stood motionless, radiating a calm that swallowed the frenzy. He murmured ancient things to the animal, and the trembling beast dropped its head against his steady shoulder. Eliza lowered the rifle she had raised and felt something inside her crack like spring ice on the creek. Bethany finally braided her hair that afternoon and came outside to help scrub the horse's dusty coat. The drifter taught Clara to hold a currycomb, guiding her small wrist until the Mustang sighed into trust. "Why do you stay?" Eliza demanded one night when the stars blazed cold above the silent prairie homestead. He rubbed a scar across his knuckles and answered, "Because I know what it means to be completely hollow." He told them he'd lost a wife and daughter to fever 8 years ago and never stopped walking. The confession hung in the air like smoke, binding their separate griefs into one shared ragged breath. Clara climbed onto his lap and pressed her doll against his heart, saying nothing but giving everything. That week, a thunderstorm descended with howling winds that tore shingles from the roof like angry crows. The drifter scrambled onto the shuddering rafters while the sisters huddled below, their prayers tangled with rain. His scarred hands lashed a tarpaulin over the gap, nails clenched between his teeth as lightning split the sky. When he finally dropped to the floor, soaked and bleeding from a split brow, Eliza caught him in her arms. She pressed a cloth to his wound and whispered, "You're not hollow anymore. You're the only solid thing left." He repaired the roof fully the next day, then rebuilt the broken kitchen table that wobbled like a drunk. Bethany baked bread from the last flour sack and set a fourth plate at the table without a single word. Clara asked the drifter to carve a new wooden horse for her doll, and he worked by lantern light. The Mustang now followed him around the corral like a loyal dog, nuzzling his shoulder whenever he stopped. Neighbors from a nearby ranch rode over, skeptical of the ragged stranger who had appeared from nowhere. They saw the mended windmill spinning silver water into the trough and the fresh fence post standing straight. Eliza stood beside the drifter and told them, "He's the one keeping my father's legacy alive right now." The men tipped their hats and left, and Bethany squeezed Eliza's hand with a trembling but genuine smile. One evening, the drifter found an old warped guitar in the attic and tuned it with careful, patient hands. He played a lonesome melody on the porch, and the notes curled into the dusk like campfire embers rising. Clara danced barefoot in the dust, while Bethany hummed along, her voice shy but sweet as clover honey. Eliza leaned against the doorframe and finally let herself cry, not for the loss, but for the found. The drifter's fingers strummed slower, and his eyes held a wetness that he no longer tried to hide. "You gave us more than fixed fences," Eliza said. "You gave us permission to live inside our own home." He shook his head and replied, "You three gave me a reason to stop walking and finally plant roots." Spring burst across the prairie with wildflowers purple and gold, and the garden he tilled pushed green shoots. Bethany started keeping a ledger again, her neat handwriting tracking the milk yield and the calf births. Clara started calling him Pa one morning at breakfast, and no one corrected her, not even the silence. The Mustang stood gentle as a lamb when Clara braided ribbons into its mane under the drifter's watchful eye. Eliza rode with him to mend the far boundary line, and they talked about fencing, weather, and her father. She finally confessed, "I was so afraid you'd replace him and erase his memory from this land forever." He removed his hat and said, "No one can replace the man who gave you his name and blood. But I can be the one who carries the weight beside you so your heart doesn't have to break alone." That afternoon, they found an orphan calf shivering by the creek, and the drifter carried it home on his shoulders. Clara named it Hope and fed it from a bottle, her small hand steady under the drifter's gentle instruction. Bethany painted the kitchen chairs bright blue, and the color startled the room into a kind of defiant joy. The drifter built a swing from old harness leather and hung it from the cottonwood where ravens nested. At twilight, the three sisters sat together on the porch, their laughter threading through the fence lines like golden thread. He stood by the corral and watched them, his chest full of something he thought had died on the road. A county fair came to the nearby town, and the drifter took the girls in the repaired hay wagon. Clara won a ribbon for her cornbread, using the recipe her mother had written on a stained recipe card. Bethany danced a reel with a shy ranch hand, and Eliza clapped until her palms stung with genuine happiness. The drifter bought them each a ribbon, and they pinned them to his hatband like medals of honor. That night back at the homestead, Clara prayed aloud, "Thank you for sending us a pa who builds things." Eliza added softly, "And thank you for letting us keep the love for the father we lost beside this." The drifter sat on his bunk and carved a family of wooden figures, a man, 3 daughters, and a horse. He placed them on the mantle, and Clara said, "Now our whole family is together, the old and the new." A letter came from a distant relative challenging the ranch claim, threatening to take the land and scatter them. The drifter read the document slowly, then strapped on a tool belt and began reinforcing every gate and door. He told Eliza, "We'll fight with proof of what we've built here, not with guns or bitter words." They gathered testimony from neighbors who had seen the revival of the ranch under the stranger's scarred hands. In the makeshift courtroom, Clara stood on tiptoes and told the judge, "He's the pa who mended our hearts." The judge ruled in their favor, and Bethany wept into her hands while the drifter silently bowed his head. On the ride home, the wagon wheels hummed over the ruts, and the drifter said, "You were always your father's daughters. I just swept the path so you could walk forward without stumbling over the pieces of your shattered past." The summer deepened with branding and haying, and the drifter taught Clara to ride the Mustang bareback. Bethany took over the egg business and stenciled a new sign that read, "Three Sisters Ranch, restored by Grace." Eliza began to call him by his real name, Samuel, and the sound of it planted roots in the soil. Samuel carved a new headstone for their father's grave, etching words that spoke of legacy, love, and continuous dawn. One morning, a family of travelers with a broken wagon stopped at the gate, desperate and hungry and weary. Samuel fixed their axle and the girls fed them stew, and Clara gave her extra doll to a tearful child. As the wagon disappeared over the ridge, Eliza turned to Samuel and said, "This is what he would have wanted. Not a shrine to grief, but a living, breathing home that spills its healing onto everyone who passes through." That harvest, they filled the larder with jars gleaming like jewels, and Bethany's laughter echoed in the cellar. Samuel taught Clara to play a simple chord on the guitar, and she strummed it until her fingers blistered. He wrapped her tiny fingertips in salve and told her, "Scars from music are the best kind to carry." The Mustang grew old and calm, and Samuel built a lean-to to shade him from the midday prairie sun. On the anniversary of their father's death, they gathered at the grave with wildflowers and a new, unbroken silence. Eliza spoke first. "We miss you, but we are whole now because you sent a wanderer to our gate." Bethany added, "He taught us that love is not a finite cup, but a well that deepens with every bucket." Clara placed her carved horse beside the stone and said, "I have two fathers now, one in heaven and one here." Samuel removed his hat and knelt, tears cutting clean tracks through the dust on his weathered face. He whispered, "Thank you for lending me your daughters and this land that gave my soul new purpose." The evening sky turned lavender, and they walked back to the house together, arms linked, shadows mingling as one. Inside, the kitchen table groaned with roasted chicken and blue-painted chairs occupied by 4 people who belonged together. Clara said grace, and her small voice filled the room with a gratitude so pure the walls seemed to hum. After supper, Samuel sat on the porch with his guitar and played a tune he'd composed during the long walks. Its melody told of dust and despair, but the chorus rose into a bright refrain of fences mended and hearts restored. The 3 sisters leaned against the posts and listened, their breathing synchronized with the rhythm of his scarred strumming. Eliza broke the silence afterward. "You know you can stay forever, don't you, Samuel? This is your home." He looked at the repaired windmill, the peaceful corral, and the swing swaying empty under the cottonwood's ancient branches. "I stopped wandering the day I saw 3 grieving statues on a broken porch and felt they need pull me. Now I'll only wander as far as the fence line needs mending, and then I'll come right back inside." Clara sprinted to him and wrapped her arms around his neck, and he lifted her like a precious rescued thing. Bethany brought out a quilt she'd sewn from pieces of her mother's old dresses and draped it over his shoulders. The 4 of them sat until the stars blazed and the coyotes sang, a family born from loss and stubborn tenderness. The ranch no longer sagged. It stood straight as a promise, its heartbeat strong in every freshly hammered nail. Samuel's scarred hands held the 3 daughters' future steady, proving that a shattered home can be rebuilt by grace. And the drifter who arrived with nothing left behind a legacy carved not in wood, but in living, breathing love.